Imagine this. You, freshly armed, with your 21st century social awareness, are dropped into a muddy medieval village. You speak up for women's rights, question the king's divine rule, and suggest maybe, just maybe, burning witches isn't a great idea. Within 5 minutes, you're branded a heretic. Within 10, you're in the stocks. By sunset, toast. Welcome to the Middle Ages, where being woke doesn't get you applause, it gets you excommunicated. In this video, we're diving into what would actually happen if you brought modern progressive ideals, gender equality, racial justice, LGBTQ+ rights, anti-feudalism, into a world that thought leeches could cure depression. Spoiler, it's not pretty, but it is hilarious, horrifying, and weirdly educational. So grab your pitchfork for defense, not offense, and let's find out, what if you were woke in a time when the most progressive idea was washing your hands? So you're in 1320 and you tell a group of villagers, hey, maybe women should have equal rights. Boom, instant silence. A goat coughs. Someone drops their bread. In medieval Europe, women were legally considered property, first of their fathers, then their husbands. Education? Rare. Voting? Not a thing. Speaking in public? Risky. And you're here suggesting equality? That's heresy wrapped in witchcraft served with a side of Satan. You might think you're helping, but to the local priest, you're a direct threat to the God-ordained natural order. The church taught that women were inherently sinful, citing Eve as humanity's original screw-up. Thanks a lot, Genesis. Suggest a woman should become a blacksmith, own land, or gasp, say no to marriage? That's enough to get both of you tied to a duck to see if she floats. Progressive? Yes. Alive for long? Unlikely. So you proudly come out in your medieval village. Maybe you even attend a one-person pride parade with a homemade rainbow made from dyed sheep wool. Brave? Yes. Smart? Not if you like your limbs attached. In medieval Europe, anything outside strict heterosexual norms wasn't just frowned upon, it was criminal, punishable by death, exile, or public humiliation. Homosexual acts were labeled sins against nature, and courts didn't hand out community service, they handed out burnings. Even worse, people didn't have language for gender fluidity or queerness like we do today. If you didn't fit the binary, you weren't non-binary, you were possessed. That said, queerness did exist. Secret relationships, coded language, and monastic crushes all happened behind closed doors. But openly waving a pride flag, that was basically an invitation to be put on trial for heresy, blasphemy, and acts unfit for a Christian goat. Woke? Yes. Alive? For now. So you stroll into the village square and shout, "The monarchy is corrupt, power to the people." You think you're starting a revolution? Everyone else thinks you've lost your damn mind. In the Middle Ages, the king wasn't just a political figure, he was chosen by God. That meant questioning the monarchy was like saying, hey, maybe the Almighty doesn't know what he's doing. Boom, heresy. Treason. Bye-bye head. Feudalism was the law of the land. Lords ruled, peasants obeyed. You start preaching about wealth redistribution, or equal rights for serfs, and suddenly you're surrounded by knights who aren't interested in your TED Talk. And don't even think about organizing a peasant union. The last time that happened, looking at you, Peasants' Revolt of 1381, it ended with leaders beheaded and the movement crushed faster than a tax collector under a falling chamber pot. So yeah, maybe keep that protest sign hidden. You walk into a medieval tavern, sip some warm ale, and casually say, hey, maybe Jews, Muslims, and pagans shouldn't be murdered for existing. Bold move. Also, dangerous. You might as well have walked in wearing a shirt that says, I heart Satan. Medieval Europe was a religious powder keg. Christianity, specifically the Catholic kind, wasn't just faith, it was law, identity, and political control rolled into one. Questioning church authority, defending other religions, or even suggesting that maybe people shouldn't be burned alive for heresy was enough to make you a target. And don't forget the Inquisition. They weren't exactly big on open dialogue. Even associating with non-Christians could get you investigated, or tortured until you confessed. So yes, promoting religious tolerance in the Middle Ages made you morally ahead of your time, and about 5 minutes away from a very smoky ending. So you try to start a conversation about mental health. Maybe suggest that depression isn't caused by demons and that bathing isn't sinful. The local healer looks at you, nods thoughtfully, and pulls out a bag of leeches. In medieval medicine, everything came down to humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Feeling anxious? Too much black bile. Bleeding from the eyes? Bad air spirits? Broken arm? Let's pray and rub onion paste on it. Hospitals were often run by monks who believed illness was divine punishment. You say, healthcare is a human right. They say, God is testing you. Mental illness, straight to the exorcist. Women showing emotion? Diagnosed with hysteria, probably a witch. Even basic hygiene was controversial. Suggest washing hands before surgery, and they'd accuse you of weakening the soul. So sure, you're woke, but after 2 weeks without antibiotics, you're also extremely dead. So after being exiled, exorcised, nearly beheaded, and probably infected with 6 different types of plague, how's that woke in medieval times experience treating you? You came in ready to dismantle oppression, challenge the patriarchy, and hug a serf. But the Middle Ages weren't just a different time, they were a completely different planet. A place where science was sorcery, empathy was heresy, and systemic change meant surviving until age 30. But here's the twist: even back then, there were people quietly pushing boundaries. Women who practiced medicine in secret. Monks who preserved radical ideas. Queer love stories hidden in poetry. Rebels who dared question power. Were they woke by today's standards? But they lit sparks in a world soaked in oil. So if nothing else, you'd be in strange, brave company. Now go home, take a hot shower, enjoy your civil rights, and maybe thank your ancestors, because being woke in 1347, that took guts and a decent life insurance policy. If you like this dark dive into historical chaos, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that little bell. You've survived the Middle Ages. Now, let's survive the algorithm.